What is up, guys? This is Tcg Sam here, and in today's video I'm coming at you guys with a discussion on whether you should be playing hand traps or trap cards in your deck to beat the meta. But before we begin, I just want to ask you guys to please remember, if you haven't already, please remember leave a like, comment, subscribe, because it really helps keep me motivated to keep posting more videos, and it really helps the channel grow. Without any further ado, let's just hop straight in. So starting off, I'm going to be talking about hand traps and some of their advantages and disadvantages. So obviously, hand traps, the biggest reason people play them is to make the game not heavily based on the dice roll at the very beginning. Since there's so many combo decks that going uninterrupted means that usually you're going to end up losing the game if your opponent just has free reign, which is why people decided it was necessary to include hand traps in their deck. And this is the huge reason why it has an inherent advantage over traps, because you're able to use it while going second, while traps, I guess other than like impermanence, you have to set while if you're going second, you have to set them for a turn before you're able to actually use them, and by then your opponent has already set up a board. In addition, hand traps can also act as potential bodies if you need to. For example, in a simplified game state, a hand trap can actually help be that extra link material you need to climb up into your link monster like Axe Skill Talker for game, whereas a trap card would not be able to do that. In addition, specifically in a deck like SHADDOLLS, it can also act as different attributes for you to fusion summon with, while a trap card, on the other hand, either cannot, or you need to set it for a turn in the case of SHADDOLL Core. In addition, hand traps can also have turn-ending blanket effects. So like these effects, specifically like Dimension Shifter and Lancia, can completely shut out your opponent's turn because they affect the entire turn and all actions within that turn. What I mean by that is, once you activate that trap, once you activate the hand trap, for that turn, that specific part of the game is turned off. So with Lancia, your opponent can't banish and stuff, and that's really, really powerful. And like I mentioned before, the fact that you can do this while going second when your opponent's going first, if you, for example, Lancia a deck like, or Droll and Lockbird a deck like Dragon Link right now, it can be really difficult for them to combo through. And while yes, you can argue there are floodgates that do the exact same thing like Imperial Iron Wall or Skill Drain, the problem with those cards is you have to be going first for them to even be good, because by then your opponent will have already established a board. So overall, the purpose of hand traps are to prevent your opponent from setting up plays so that you can turn the game in your favor when you go, by either OTKing your opponent or setting up your own unbreakable board yourself. It's important to note that for hand traps, in my opinion, I would say are better in combo decks where they do just want to destroy, like just OTK their opponent next turn or set up an unbreakable board. But I'm not saying like you can't play them in control decks. But in control decks, sometimes traps cards actually are just better. So the thing with trap cards is they usually swing tempo greatly more than a hand trap can. So hand traps usually at best are 1-for-1 trades, or whereas sometimes they're even neg ones. If let's say if you Ash Blossom like Alistair the Invoker, technically that's a -1. But like best case scenario, you could go like Gamma on Alistair, you trade 1-for-1. But like cards like trap cards like Terrestrial Tribute can give you +2, +3 depending on how many monsters you destroy. And it can also out-problem cards like Dragoon, whereas hand traps would not be able to do that once the board is established. So for example, once Dragoon is put on board, you can Ice Dragon's Prison to get rid of it, whereas like no hand trap is able to do that once Dragoon is established on the board. So the thing with trap cards is they actually swing tempo more than hand traps can, whereas hand traps are kind of just like slap on the wrist compared to trap cards, which can be huge blowouts. In addition, trap cards can also be used to proactively start your own plays for certain decks. So whereas hand traps are only meant to stop your opponent, cards like Paleozoic Morella, Sinister Shadow Games are really good trap cards that allow you to start up your own engine by setting up your engine cards, specifically in this case sending them to the graveyard. But these trap cards allow you to actually proactively do something so that you have more plays, as opposed to just stopping your opponent from making plays themselves. Speaking of sending cards to the graveyard, trap cards sometimes can also have bonus effects in the graveyard that give it more value even after being used. So cards like Shaddoll Incarnation, Breakthrough Skill, Lost Wind, cards like that all have bonus effects in the graveyard, which once you use them once, actually can help mitigate their slowness in a way by getting you slowly getting you more advantage once you use their graveyard effects. In addition, they're usually more flexible than hand traps, because it's more difficult for your opponent to play around. For example, every opponent knows to play around Nibiru, but into your trap cards, they don't know if they need to play around Ice Dragon's Prison, Paleozoic Dynamiscus, Solemn Strike, Torrential Tribute, stuff like that. And in addition to that, Nibiru, for example, is specifically only good against combo decks that really like to summon a lot. Whereas Torrential Tribute, even if it isn't a blowout against every single deck, even trading 1-for-1 with like a Golden Lord summon off a Scarlet is still better than Nibiru in that situation, because Nibiru in hand is just completely dead against a deck like Eldritch, for example, whereas Torrential Tribute, albeit not very good, is still decent enough to trade 1-for-1 with the Eldritch. So overall, the purpose of the trap cards is the same as hand traps, where they try to prevent your opponent from setting up plays, but in addition, they also allow you to sometimes start your own plays, in the case of Sinister Shadow games, for example, or break boards that are already established, which is the huge thing between traps and hand traps. For example, cards like Torrential Tribute plus Solemn Strike is widely known as probably the best combo board-breaking trap duo there is out there. Maybe Stormy Mirror Force, Neo Sealing Strike, plus all the things plus Strike. Honestly, like huge board wise plus Strike can be really, really good. And that also leads me to my final point that I'm going to make. Trap cards are also usually more difficult to deal with because of cards like Solemn Strike, which prevent your opponent from responding with anything that's not spell speed 3 or higher. So they have to use their own counter trap, or they have to use a card like Red Reboot or something. Like honestly, the fact that your opponent sometimes can't respond to your trap cards and interruptions make it really, really powerful. And in addition, there's just more trap cards that allow you to deal with more situations than hand traps possibly can. So hand traps, like, you can negate effects, you can stop effects with Ash Blossoms by sending stuff to the graveyard, but with trap cards you can board wipe, you can negate effects, you can send cards, stop cards from being sent to the graveyard, all that's good stuff. And that's what it ultimately boils down to. So while trap cards are more overall flexible and more powerful in a way, hand traps offer you the key advantage of allowing you to go second against that combo deck specifically, because just being able to stop them from setting up a board can just completely mean that you're just set up for the entire game, and you can just win outright from there. Whereas if you have a handful of trap cards, it can be a problem for you to even start your own plays. So that's ultimately what the argument boils down to. It's going to be different for different decks. For example, you could in theory play Eldritch hand traps, just play the Eldritch engine plus a bunch of hand traps, or you can play the Eldritch trap build that's been going around. Interestingly enough, if you notice, most people actually tend to go the trap route, and the reason for that is because in a deck like Eldritch, where it has such a good grind game, like the fact that it can start swinging its tempo in its direction with trap cards just means it can start snowballing really quickly. Like the effects that normally in the end phase seem kind of slow, if you're able to complement that with trap cards that completely skip your opponent's turn pretty much, you're able to pretty much just start to set up your resource game, and your opponent will never be able to outgrind you. Whereas on the other hand, if you notice, most combo decks like Dragon Link, obviously they are playing hand traps as opposed to playing cards like, they could be playing cards like Torrential, Solemn Strike to break boards if they're forced to go second, and going first, it could supplement their boards really well. But it's really important to note in a deck like Dragon Link, one, it's a combo deck, and two, the hand traps sometimes have greater value as monsters, either to banish off of their chaos stuff or to use as link material. So overall, like I mentioned before, that's what it ultimately boils down to. Do you need the interruptions to stop your opponent when you're going second, or do you value the huge just almost auto win potential of traps going first? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Of course, this is just my opinion only. Let me know what you guys thought of what I was saying. If you guys liked the video, please remember, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and once again, leave a comment below what you think you would prefer in your deck specifically. Of course, just also remember, it's going to be different for different decks. Not every single deck can fit in a bunch of hand traps or a bunch of traps. But yeah, with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and with that, I will see you guys soon. Take care.